Hi, John Mark. We will begin shortly.
Sounds good, no worries.
Hi. Our first.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Just checking in. Patrick, you are here. Anna, you are here. Jackie is here. I am here. So we have quorum.
Correct.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, John Mark. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for submitting interest in the vacancy for the District 4 position. I will be timekeeper today. We'll have 10 questions, and at 5 minutes, I will raise my hand. I know it's probably difficult to see me, but can you see me?
I can see you
Yes, I
doing
can.
that. Okay.
Okay. So we have plenty of time, but do want, and I won't stop you, but if you see my hand, that will indicate that you are at a 5-minute answer. And Jackie and I will just toggle back and forth with asking questions. And so if you could just state your name before we get started, and then we'll dive into the questions.
Sure, my name is John Mark Fielmeyer.
Welcome, John Mark. All right, first question. What motivated you to apply for this school board position?
Sure, so I made a very active choice to stay in Des Moines over the last 10 years and ultimately to raise my 2 children, first and kindergarten, in the district. And why? Because I truly love Des Moines. I love the city, and I want to raise my children in a diverse community. I believe that they are better off and will have a larger worldview if they are in Des Moines Public Schools than anywhere else, especially in Iowa. And I have to worry about my kids every day about how they might be treated at school differently because they have 2 fathers. I have to worry about them how they might be treated differently because they have a single dad. And I have to worry about how they might be treated differently because they have special needs, having come from foster care, adopted from foster care. And in my experience with the Des Moines Public Schools, I have found that I can have a really powerful voice for my children, especially for my son. I've had to go to school and I've had to speak up about some of the things that he's experiencing, especially around restraints and discipline. And I just want to recognize that a lot of parents are not able to find the time in their school day to be present, to speak up for their kids, even if they want to. They might not have the language, thinking about 20% being ELL. And so I like to believe that I can also be a voice for the people in my district and for all the families that are in Des Moines Public Schools. And ultimately, Terry was an icon. She's a monolith. There's nobody that you're interviewing from this list that I've seen that could replace her. She's been an inspiration to me over the years. I've watched her and seen how she works, and I hope to at least live up to what she would expect when it comes to advocating, when it comes to being present, and when it comes to serving the district. I'm really excited about this opportunity. It's something that I really want to do. I want to do it for my kids, and I want to do it for the children of Des Moines.
Thank you.
Thank you. John Mark, the second question is as follows. What do you feel are the largest challenges facing our school district, and how would your appointment to the school board help the board in addressing the challenges?
Yes, so over time, I've spoken to a lot of teachers. I've spoken to families. I've spoken to administration. I've spoken to a few of you. I've sat in to listen to Dr. Roberts speak. I've watched board meetings, and I've come to believe that there are two big challenges that I think Des Moines Public Schools is facing. And the first one is really around meeting the social, emotional needs of students. And the other one, to me, is really around empowering teachers. And so I'll just speak briefly to each of those. The first one, when we talk about meeting the needs of students, I think the evidence is there in 41% chronic absenteeism, in rates of behavior referrals. We could look at all of these things as discipline issues, things that just need to be fixed. But the reality is, knowing that we have a diverse student base and knowing that mental health issues are at an all-time high. As a foster dad, I've sat in Mercy Hospital with a kid who is struggling with those issues, and I've seen it firsthand, especially in high school youth, working with them at Art Force Iowa. And there's just a lot more there. And I believe that they need a trauma-informed approach. I believe that they need outreach. And those are the sorts of things that I specialize in. When it comes to the second part, which is empowering teachers, 2,700 teachers is a lot, right? You have a lot of teachers at the district. And I hear them, and they are smart and creative. My kids' teachers are wonderful. I love them. And what I hear when I talk to them is that sometimes they feel like they're treated like factory workers. It's hard to standardize curriculum and expect high fidelity respect to the things that they're learning. And I think the most important thing is to find a way in all of that to empower teachers to use their creativity, use their intelligence, use their grit, and use their education to teach better and teach in ways that they know that they work based on what they see in their classroom. Happier teachers, to me, empowered teachers is going to lead to better results for Des Moines Public Schools. And so those are the two things. You know, the other part of the question is, how can I help? I'm not an expert in education, right? I acknowledge that. That's, I'm a person in the school district who cares. But, like I'm here in New York right now. I can't be there this week because this is what I do for a living. I listen to people in the finance industry, and I try and understand their needs and how we can protect their security, improve their experiences. And then I bring that back in a collaborative way to the people that I work with, the designers and the people who create products, so that they can create better products for people. And I think that applies directly to school board service. I think I can have my ear to the ground and really help you all to synthesize what we're hearing, look for data and facts to either back that up or maybe send us in a different direction and bring that to all of you. And ultimately, together, I think that we can continue to improve these particular things. I also have this experience doing outreach in West Africa and in Des Moines, really finding hard to reach people and supporting their journey towards achieving their goals. So I feel like my background, my experience would be really helpful to the board to work on these two goals.
Thank you. Maria, do you want to ask question 3? And actually, before you begin, I do want to let you know, John Mark, that this is recorded. And so Jenna joined late, but she has the opportunity to watch the first part that she missed, just so you're aware of that.
No worries, that's fine.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes, you should be able to hear me. I can hear myself, so I know you can hear me. Thank you for being here this afternoon. The next question we have is, how do you plan to collaborate with other board members and community members to make informed decisions?
Sure. I'll answer that in 2 parts since it's kind of a 2-part question. I think speaking to you all, board members first, I think for me, my life and work has been highly collaborative. I've developed programs and products, like I've mentioned, to meet the needs of people that I'm serving. And I understand both how to be a team player and how to facilitate collaboration. And the number one thing that I've learned in all of this work is that psychological safety is number one. So for me, it would be a priority to get to know each of you personally, spend some one-on-one time, understand what matters to you, and understand how I can help advocate for that. And hopefully you'll do the same for me if I can share what I'm experiencing and what's important to me. And again, I'm just going to say over and over again, I'm not an expert in education. I'm a parent who cares. And ultimately, I know that I have a lot to learn from you all. And that's how I want to join. I like to use the analogy. I used to be a choir director, and you don't show up to a new church and say like, your music is bad, we're gonna learn a bunch of new music. You show up and say, what do you sing well? So I want to hear what you all have to sing well, and join that journey and start to speak up as well about the things that I care about. From a community perspective, as I previously stated, that's what I do for a living, listening to the community and collaborating with people. So I would love to use those skills. The thing that we always say in my industry is that I am not the user. In this case, I am not the constituent. I am a constituent, right? But I understand that this community has a lot of diverse needs, and I want to listen with deep empathy to people and work with you all, work with the district to hear about the data and the things that are actually happening and understand what's really going on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I apologize, John Mark, I just took a bite.
Where is it all?
Please.
Question 4. What do you see as the role of a school board member in holding the superintendent accountable for achieving the goals while honoring our guardrails?
Sure. So I just want to start out by saying I have tremendous respect for Dr. Roberts. I've really enjoyed watching remotely a lot of school board meetings and hearing how he talks about the school with the students with such deep empathy, and frankly, how clear some of his strategies are to improve outcomes. I like to think of myself as a support to Dr. Roberts, and I would hope for him not to think of me as an authority. I'd hope for mutual accountability. So yes, I will hold Dr. Roberts accountable for the goals and guardrails that you all are forming. And how will I do that? My intention is really to invest my time. Anyone who knows me will tell you when I'm in something, I'm in it to win it. I will work really, really hard to make sure I've studied everything, that's prepared for board meetings, that I ask questions, that I spend one-on-one time with people who can help me to understand what's going on so that I can form an opinion and thus hold Dr. Roberts accountable. But also, I want to be present in schools. And, as a dad, my world is small with Jefferson Elementary. But as a board member, I want to get to know every school in the district as well as the entire schools, and I plan to spend time there if you all will allow me, or the principals allow me in the classrooms. I want to understand and see firsthand some of the things that the district is working on, so that I can see how it is maybe positively or negatively affecting the goals and guardrails, and so that I can speak up at board meetings about those things and ultimately hold Dr. Roberts accountable.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. How do you envision engaging with parents, students, and community stakeholders to ensure that their voices are heard in the decision-making process?
Sure. So I just want to start out by saying that I think something that I have to bring is really diverse experience and a wide worldview. I've lived in foreign countries and struggling foreign countries, and have worked to make progress doing things like getting into people's homes and talking about, engaging young women that are discouraged from education. Here in Des Moines, as the founding executive director of Art Force Iowa, I was meeting with kids in detention and supporting them and trying to set goals with them so that they could achieve what they wanted to achieve in life. And a lot of that comes back to, I'm pretty good at listening to people and understanding what's going on and helping to forge a direction. How would I do that at the school district? I kind of have it, I think about it in 3 ways. I think, I want to be present. So this is, I try to be present to my kids' education, but now I would be present in a larger way, right? So not just the after school activities and that sort of thing, but being at sporting events and places where people can approach me, and also being available, the second thing, so people can approach me and talk to me about what's going on, what their concerns are. But honestly, I would say the most important way that I would like to listen to people and make sure that they're heard in decision-making process is through outreach. And, as a single dad, it's a sacrifice to make it to meetings, but I'm there because I can be. But I know a lot of parents struggle to be as present in their education as the district would like. So I want to do the outreach. I would love to go knock on doors with Dr. Roberts and listen with empathy to people who are struggling to get their kids to school or struggling with behavior or other outcomes. I'd like to make sure that that's a priority, and I'm not over reliant on the people who are reaching out to me. I'll be there and listen to everything they have to say, but to me, that's not enough. I want to make sure that that I'm talking to a group of people that are as diverse as the Des Moines Public Schools.
Thank you. You want to take question 6, Jenna?
Okay, question 6. Can you provide an example of a difficult decision you've had to make in a leadership role and how you approached it?
Sure. So in my work, especially my time in the nonprofit sector, having built up 2 nonprofits from the ground up, and I'm talking like in both of these situations, the first day I walked in, there wasn't even furniture, there weren't programs, there wasn't anything. I spent a lot of time building those up, and in each situation, there came a point when I recognized that it was actually in the best interest of the people that I serve and the organization to bring in new talent that could take the organization to the next level. So I'm proud of everything that I did to build up these organizations and make them sustainable as far as nonprofits go. But ultimately, I didn't want these projects to become vanity projects for me, the John Mark show, so to speak. And so it was important for me to step away and bring in new leadership, honestly, even more diverse leadership that could help to build out these programs and explore new things. And I could move on and keep on building because that's what I really love to do. And so it was a hard decision every time I decided. I mean, these 2 times that I decided, but I think the proof is in the pudding. Both of these organizations still exist, and it's hard for me to even believe it, but the Center for Art and Music in WIDA that I founded in Benin with some donors is still in existence 14 years later, and Art Force Iowa is still in existence 11 years later. So I truly feel like I made the right decision for the organization and for myself to keep moving.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question 7 is, how do you plan to balance the needs and interests of District 4 stakeholders while making decisions that are in the best interest of all students?
Sure. I think there are a few pieces to this. One is that I feel very well connected to the wider Des Moines area. About half of the time I've lived in, over half of the time I've lived in Des Moines was actually on the northeast side, right off of Union Park. I feel very well connected to those areas. During that time, I spent a lot of time in those schools. Now I'm a Southsider, and proud to be a Southsider and love my neighborhood and the area that I live in. But I do believe that I'll be able to continue to think about all these things. This is an interesting conundrum for for a parent who has kids in Jefferson, because ultimately Jefferson is achieving pretty well when it comes to benchmarks and those sorts of things. So I intend to be really careful, listen to anyone who wants to talk to me, and really, with a heavy heart, hear what they have to say and try not to cast a judgment. But what I'm really concerned about are those kids who are chronically absent, Black and brown kids that are getting behavior referrals, a lot of the things that I've been seeing in the data and the board meetings. And even if that isn't relevant to my area, those are the things that I care about the most. And I will continue to really focus on helping the board to prioritize, these goals that are holistic and matter to everybody, not just my kids' education.
Thank you.
How will you ensure transparency and accountability in your role as a school board member?
Sure. Again, a really interesting question to think about. How will I ensure transparency and accountability? And I think the number one thing is my active engagement, my participation, reading every page that's given to me. If you select me, you'll know that I will have a lot of questions in between board meetings, and I will definitely try to understand everything that's going on, because ultimately, I think part of the duty of a school board member is to really have rationale behind every decision that they make. And I think that it's really important for parents, especially parents who get focused on maybe the smaller things that are somewhat divergent from the goals and guardrails, to understand that we have to make some hard decisions. And those decisions are based on the success of all of our 32,000 students. And I think this is especially important, transparency and accountability going into the next couple of years for the board. From what I've heard from you all and from teachers is, budget cuts, legislation, reimagine education. The school district is going to change over the next couple of years, and we have to communicate that really well and really transparently to the community so that they understand where we are and why we have to make the decisions we make. So, how will I do that? I feel like maybe I'm repeating myself a little bit, so excuse the redundancy, but the number one thing is listening and communicating and making myself available to the community. And that's absolutely what I intend to do if you all select me for this position.
Okay, question 9. To me, or Jackie, did you want to take
for
it? Okay, I'll take it. Can you share a time when you challenged the status quo in a previous role? What was the situation, your approach, and the outcome?
Sure. So for this question, I think the most relevant thing for me is to think all the way back to Art Force Iowa, this program that I founded or was part in founding. I can't take full credit for it, but I was the first executive director building up programs and processes and all these things. And it was an interesting situation. I was coming back from West Africa after having done Peace Corps, after having set up this other organization. And I found this group of people who had received a federal grant to serve juvenile delinquents, juvenile court-involved youth, with a mix of arts and workforce education. And it was very interesting because here I was just showing up in Des Moines for the first time. This is over 10 years ago, trying to figure out how do we even engage this demographic. So the situation ultimately, I started talking to juvenile court officers and folks who are very involved with these young people. And to me, honestly, what I experienced was that the status quo seemed to be that they were pretty punitive, they lacked belief in the youth that they were serving. I don't know if they even saw it as service. And so ultimately, as we started to build out this program, we decided to just, not be another grant-funded program that serves juvenile court youth. We wanted to have radical empathy and support for these youth. So we started stepping away from just talking to court officers. We actually got into juvenile detention and we started doing workshops there. We started meeting people who wanted to engage. And when they started engaging, we showed up for them. We went to every court hearing that they had. We went back to detention if they ended up back there. We supported them through mentorship. We helped them to get jobs, used restorative justice to kind of bring back to the picture some of their past wrongs. And, through creating that radical empathy and youth-centered programming, we were really able to radically change outcomes. We saw kids recidivating less, which was amazing. And the most beautiful part was seeing them graduate, which is, I'm sure you're aware, for youth who are court involved, the likelihood is less that they'll graduate than other students. So ultimately, through that work and that radical empathy for our youth, stepping away from how the system was treating our youth and focusing on what our youth really needed, we were able to have this success. And that's a large part of why this organization still exists today.
Thank you. And I do want to let you know, Mr. Dix and Ms. Campos are here, so you should be able to see all 6 of us now.
We made it.
Fantastic.
Good evening.
We
Hello.
have one, are we on question 9?
10.
10, okay, so, right, okay, thank you. I have the easy one. What questions do you have? This is your opportunity to ask us questions.
I'm really curious for your reactions on sort of my synthesis and talking to all of these folks. And, I'll just bring back the 2 things I said as like meeting the unmet social emotional needs of students and truly empowering teachers. I'm curious, what's your reaction to those as the things that I heard from my conversations with people?
John Mark, this is Patrick, and I think your approach to this whole process has been unique among the candidates. And as you know, you met all of the candidates, and we have a great slate of 6 wonderful people. But I think your approach is unique. That's kind of as I was listening to your answers, that's what I was thinking, is that your approach and your perspective come at it just from a different lens and direction than a lot of the other candidates do.
Thank you.
I want to talk specifically about the question regarding kind of the analysis of teachers. And if I understood that correctly, I think is that your question, John Mark? Which is, I've kind of
I'm curious.
assessed these challenges. What do you think? Did I get the
Yeah,
question right?
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
It's really interesting because I think this role doesn't make you do much of anything, right? You have to show up, you have to vote, you have good attendance, and come informed. I don't even know if it says that you have to do that. But, the real way, at least for me, that I found, I'm a contextual learner. And so it's having conversations with teachers before and after school, so you don't get in the way of their contract. It is talking to parents and kids, and, it could be at the soccer fields or, at a band concert. But I think part of it for me is trying to understand the day, understand the issues that a teacher is trying to address. Just yesterday, I was in a classroom and I kind of walked out amazed because I would have fallen apart after about 1 hour based on some of the, controlled chaos that was happening. And so, I think it's a long way of saying we should do everything in our power to be thanking our teachers, but also supporting them with the tools and resources that they need to be successful, and also continue to recognize that our students have evolved and our students' needs are growing, whether it be around mental health, it be around other kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're asking a lot of our teachers, and the more that we know those stories, to bring light to those stories, to make sure that those stories are informing our policy, both at the board table, but then also at the State House level, I think is really important.
I appreciate you mentioning meeting the unmet needs of our students, particularly their unmet social and emotional needs. As you know, we have a guardrail focused on that, and like Jackie said, that hierarchy of needs. If we're not meeting those needs, our students will not be in a place where they can consume and be in the ideal conditions for learning. So I'm grateful that you mentioned that and have a focus on that and a background in that. So, thank you.
Same as Kim. I think that the social and emotional needs of students and really staff as well. I think that the work that teachers do is incredible every day, and social emotional needs, I think, is something that affects everyone or everyone deals with. And so thank you for mentioning that, and empowering teachers, wow, the work that they do as well. Individually, the effort, and I don't think that have enough to compensate for all that they do. So thank you for lifting that.
Any additional questions? We've got lots of time.
Yeah, I guess I spoke too fast, huh? I I'm curious about maybe this is an awkward question to ask to all of you, but how do you all feel like you're functioning as a board? How is it going?
Anna just picked me up from the airport. I'm coming in from a business trip, so I think it's going pretty well.
It helps I just got off of work. No, honestly, I said it yesterday. One thing, we all live different lives. Each individual us here on the board, we all, the thing that we have in common is our love and our passion for our students, our teachers, and our staffs of Des Moines Public Schools. And that unifies us. You can look at other districts elsewhere, and I think we have a good thing going. Yes, we don't get along, and we're not supposed to get along 100%. But we're adults and we work well together, and I think our camaraderie and we have our focus, and we know what our focus is, which is our students, and our staff and our teachers. So I think that sums it up for me.
Yes, we have a lot of respect for each other. I think everyone wants the same thing in the end. Our ideals are very in line, and I think that no one brings a personal agenda to the table, and we're pretty good about checking one another if we feel like that starts to emerge, which of course we're human, it may. But no, I think one of my favorite parts of being on this board is serving with my board colleagues. They're all wonderful people.
That was nice. Yeah. No, we do. I think, for me, Anna kind of referenced this, but I really learn a lot from my colleagues, just the different perspective, whether it's a district perspective. I think everybody knows their district. They know a lot about the kids, the students, the facilities, the teachers, and there are unique needs that are related to geography. And so I think part of the fun of this is allowing that to happen, right? Especially for at-large board members, our job is to know the whole city, and that's hard, right? And so it's also helpful when you have your district representatives that are bringing in the Southside Pride, Polar Bear Pride, Husky Pride, Rider Pride.
Rails, well.
Didn't I do Southside Pride?
East side,
Thank you, Scarlet Pride. They are, right. Walking a state fair parade with the East High students, and everybody knows their name. So, yeah.
I guess maybe one more question. Thanks for sharing. It's great. It's clear to me just seeing how you all work together, even in the board meetings, that things work well. But it's good to hear that from you all as well. And I guess, I gave you my opinion on the two things that I think are, the biggest sort of obstacles or challenges for the school district. I'd be curious to hear what a few of you might think are the biggest obstacles or challenges that the school district is facing, especially around meeting the audacious goals that you all are setting.
We all just completed a 2-month kind of tour of community listening and engagement. So I think it's all really fresh in our brains with regards to what is it that our community is struggling with, and what is it that they are facing on a daily basis that, whether it's a barrier or in order to meet, to improve outcomes, that sort of thing. But there's a lot. There's a lot going on in our community. The attack on public education, the underfunding of public education year after year, the attack on our, marginalized students, engaging our community in a way that is meaningful and sustainable, particularly our community partners, to help as we face budget cuts. And then really creating a lot of change in a district that has a new leader, new leaders at the board table with new vision, and ensuring that we are implementing with fidelity. No one likes that word at this table. Just being true to all those voices that we've heard, and making sure that our decisions are grounded in our community and improving student outcomes.
Agree with Kim, and I think one of the things I felt like I heard loud and clear from our community was that action-oriented guidance from the board would be appreciated. We have done a lot of talking about all of our challenges, and I think they're very well known. And so I think that balance between keeping that in your mind, but still having a high expectation for the outcomes is a really, it's a tricky balance. But I think this board is, one of the things I like best about my board colleagues is that they are all very action-oriented, and that's the way they look at the issues that we're discussing.
And I think there are so many needs, I think, that our district is facing, and how do you decide which is more important, or what's more important? I think maybe this is also considering who you are as a person, and where you live and the community you represent and your background. And, I see we struggle with the decline in enrollment, not having enough teachers, retaining teachers, representation, right? Making sure that our staff is really reflective of the student population we have. There's just so much, the social, emotional needs, right, that students have and staff have as well. If all those we can just make into one, then I would say all of those. I mean, it's everything. Yeah.
Maybe just one more question, and then I'm happy to end early if we end early, but I'm curious, so that's challenges. What do you see as the biggest opportunity for Des Moines Public Schools over these next few years?
Obviously, our board leadership.
I just believe with my whole heart that if we can figure out how to harness I always say our diversity is our superpower, and we haven't quite figured out how to use it. When I think about the level of cultural understanding of each other, and how our students can be teaching each other, how everybody can be learning from each other, that's how you actually prepare young people for careers in the 21st century. And I just don't think we've completely figured that out. Our diversity is not a challenge, it's an opportunity, and I think it's untapped. And that, I think, continues to get me really excited because we have an amazing student body, and they are smart, they are confident, they're different, right? They're different than other generations, and I think part of our job is to remind our community our kids are really cool. They're a little different, and different isn't bad, right? But the way of learning and education 20 years ago is not where we are anymore. And so part of this is, bringing them into the community and letting everybody see how great DMPS is and the products of DMPS.
I want to circle back to leadership and also echo that I think we're really excited about our superintendent that we hired, Dr. Roberts. He brings so much energy. I think he models the empathy and the just sort of the spirit of what Des Moines Public Schools should be. And so, I feel confident in his leadership and I'm excited to see that continue to grow and unfold as more of the district follows his lead, and as we continue to bolster out a sort of new perspective under his leadership.
I think the most exciting thing is, and you'll hear it from everybody sitting around this board table, everyone's had an experience like Jackie had yesterday. We hear about a program, we lift things up at the beginning of our meetings, scaling some of those successes and then telling that story in a compelling way to our community and to the state. To turn around some of the story that's been told for us is a really exciting. I think that we're on the verge of being able to do that, and I think that's a really exciting tool that we have to use over the next few years.
My little point of view is the students' frostbite from North High School. I mean, you look at them and what they've done. Even the class here at Central Campus, the marine biology class, they've done a lot. And we're in the Midwest. We don't have, oceans and seas and sea life and sea creatures in our backyards. So things like that we've been doing, that gives me I grew up here in Des Moines. Kids graduated here, and what I've seen and this generation of kids that are in school right now, they have a voice, they have a new passion. We got to listen to them. We got to tap it in. We have to give them those tools. And it's going to be hard for us to give them the tools, but we got to find it. This is what the board is. We have all these ideas. Dr. Roberts have good ideas. And we have to tap into it. And with what Frostbite's doing at North and what students are doing at Roosevelt, Lincoln, and East, and all our schools, even our junior highs, even our elementary schools, I'm just excited to see what our future is for the next 10 years.
I have to say that it's really exciting for me to hear and see more our board talk about and do more of working to include families in the education of our students. We believe that education begins at home. And if we're not including families, then we're not really doing what works best and where things should begin. So I think that we've had a lot more conversations recently about the importance of schools and families, parents working together. That is so exciting for me. And the other thing I think is the cohesiveness maybe that I see we have as a board, working to hold each other accountable, and how that really trickles down, has to, for things to work. So that gives me a lot of hope. And we have the best board.
That was not a joke when I said that earlier.
I believe you now. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives. I think, whether or not you all choose me for this position, I'm not saying this to charm you. What you just said is super inspirational. And, especially Jackie, going back to the diversity of the school district and having been that kid that grew up as the other in the country. I grew up in rural Iowa, and then having these kids, right, who have a dad that's from the Ivory Coast and West African, and having these diverse experiences. There's so much opportunity, and you all are on it. So I am just really happy to hear your perspective and to be considered for this. I would love to be there, and just like for all of you, this would be a huge sacrifice for me. But I just, believe that it's 100% worth it for Will and Kate, my kids. So thank you so much for your consideration. Do you all have any other questions for me?
I think that's it. Thank you, John Mark. We are grateful for your time this evening and grateful for your consideration and application. We have 2 additional interviews this evening, and at the completion of the interviews, we will begin calculating scale scores as well as deliberation, and we will have an answer this evening. The selected candidate will be sworn in at the meeting, our regular business meeting on April 16th. So have a wonderful rest of your evening in New York, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again for your time. Cheers.
Thank you.
Hi, Cam. Welcome. Thank you for being here. We have an hour to spend with you. I will be a timekeeper today, and we will each ask questions around the dais, but I will raise my hand at 5 minutes.
Okay.
But you know that I'm not going to stop you. Just when you see my hand go up, that'll be 5 minutes. I've not raised my hand yet for anybody, so make me raise my hand. No. If you could first, before we get started with questions, just state your name. And again, thank you for your consideration of this role, and thanks for being here.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. Cameron Middlebrooks is my name. That was an easy question.
Easiest question of the night. Anna, do you want to get us started? You're on now.
All right. Thanks for being with us on this lovely day. So tell us what motivated you for applying for the school board position.
Thank you, Anna. Well, first, I have a deep-rooted commitment to this community. I've done this since I was 15, 16, getting started with the NAACP. And it's really just important for me to always be impactful where I can. When I think about the school board, I initially go back to my grandmother. In her 30s, she went to Drake University to become a public school teacher. And I had the glorious opportunity of being raised in her home and seeing her commitment to excellence, seeing her drive to her community, which she's passed on to us as a family. But I'll be honest, it was not my initial intent to put my name in the hat for this. It wasn't in my plan, per se. But I got called by some people that I highly respect, trust, and enjoy working with, some mothers in my community that they're hard to say no to, number one. So I decided to really put some great thought and consideration into it. And my process begins and ends with prayer. And through that prayer process, I started to look at some of the tributes that started coming up from Terry Caldwell Johnson. She came on board of the school board, 18 years ago. It was actually my senior year, I think I was coming out. And her initial impact there was about representation. And in my history, I mean, you guys have seen my resume. I've always been about how do I represent for my communities and the communities that I care about. In addition to that, I really look at Terry's vision. This is an opportunity. I'm not running for election, so I think this is an opportunity to really uphold Terry's visions and values, right? And the visions and values that I see from her are quality, right? Ensuring that we have a quality educational system for every student. Accountability, that we are, as a board, if I'm appointed, we're accountable first and foremost to our students, and then to our community at large. And then lastly, results. At the end of the day, we have too many kids out here that are underachieving. And it's up to us, regardless of the barriers that we face from funding, the barriers that we face with just socioeconomical needs of our community members. We have to produce not only for the children, but for our community at large.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cam, you touched on them a little bit, but what do you feel are the largest challenges facing our school district? And how would your appointment to the school board help the board in addressing these challenges?
I think that an easy one to point out is budget constraints. We see what our legislature is doing to public education. But you also have chronic absenteeism and also disparities in academic achievement. We see these issues across society, right? But across society, we also know when we have those barriers, the kids, the families that struggle the most and are disproportionately affected are many times people of my community, the Black and brown community. And it's important that we overcome those barriers, regardless of, it's important that we overcome and achieve for our students, regardless of the barriers. My experience in being a community organizer and advocating at many levels from the city to the state is something that I think I've proven that I can do. It's something that I'm always encouraged to do. Being an agent of change is something that I'm proud to uphold. And I think we have to have an emphasis on strategic partnerships and community engagement. And I've proven over the course of many years that I'm willing and ready to work with anybody that's willing and ready to work on solution-oriented issues.
Thank you.
How do you plan to collaborate with other board members and community members to make informed decisions?
It starts with active listening, engagement, and dialogue. No matter what you do, you got to make sure that you're listening and you're engaging with your community members and engaging with the board. I believe in having tough conversations, and critical conversations are needed. We're not always going to agree with each other, nor should we, right? But I think it's positive when you have that constructive criticism with each other, you having constructive conversations. But at the end of the day, if you're not solution-oriented, you shouldn't be in this seat, right? And I always come to any table that I'm sitting at, ensuring that I'm going to be solution-oriented and ensuring that I'm engaging in dialogue with as many community members as possible, regardless of the reason why they come to the table. I'm thinking about AJ during our training the other day. You got to be hard enough to make the tough decisions, but soft enough to feel and empathize with the community that you're focused on. And that really struck me when he said that. It's something that I feel like I've always understood, but have never been able to articulate it in such a concise way. But at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. I think, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cam, what do you see as the role of a school board member in holding the superintendent accountable for achieving the goals while honoring our guardrails?
Sure. Well, establishing those key guardrails as a board, right? And ensuring that we're monitoring and tracking that progress. Again, it also goes to dialogue with the superintendent to ensure that we're getting all the information in a transparent way as possible so we can make a decision that best serves our students and best serves our community. But I also think there's an opportunity for us to continue to educate our community on what the roles and responsibilities are of the school board versus the superintendent. In my conversations in the past several weeks with community members that are engaged and really have a stake, some of the wants and needs that they have of the school board based on the training are not necessarily the board's responsibility. And it was not shocking, but this governance structure is different than most boards, right? And that most people understand it to be. I think it's incumbent upon the board to ensure that our community is educated on the way that we're structured and the reasons why. Now, is there wiggle room to figure out a best possible solution that the community wants? I do believe so. But we as a board, have to constructively work through that and be on the same page in terms of our role and how we see the role and responsibility of the superintendent.
Thank you.
How do you envision engaging with parents, students, and community stakeholders to ensure their voices are heard in the decision-making process?
Being present. There's numerous community events. There's numerous neighborhood association meetings that I could be attending. I love a good football game. I love a good basketball game. Just being present and having those informal and non-formal conversations as much as possible and meeting people where they're at the end of the day. And again, it gives an opportunity for them to educate me on the issues that matter most to them, but then also an opportunity to educate them on the proper procedures in order to get their goals done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Cam, you have plenty of time, just so you know. So.
Okay. Perfect.
You can use it on question 6. Can you provide an example of a difficult decision you've had to make in a leadership role and how you approached it?
Yeah, I was actually excited about this question. So a few years ago, when I was president of NAACP, I also had the opportunity to serve as chair of the Civil and Human Rights Commission. During my time on that commission, we developed a subcommittee, the LGBT Advisory Council. And when that committee was developed, I was looking at the membership, and I didn't see a single person of color on that subcommittee. And then I looked back and turned back to the membership of the NAACP, and I didn't see anybody that came from the LGBTQ community. And questions arose. Why? Why are you not with the NAACP? Why are you not with LGBT or One Iowa? And I began to ask members of the community that identified with both groups. And they told me they didn't feel welcomed for whatever reason, right? Numerous reasons. And I wanted to do something about that. So I went back to my board at the NAACP and had a lot of tough conversations saying that we need to identify ways to engage with this community or individuals that identify with both communities, because simple fact, they're being discriminated twice over, right? And I'd be remiss to say it was a tough conversation because it wasn't something that the NAACP in Des Moines was used to engaging with. And we had a number of conversations with One Iowa. We had a number of conversations with members of the community, and the result of which was a series of conversations, a series of dialogues that the NAACP hosted with One Iowa to discuss the intersectionality of being Black and LGBTQ. What I was most excited about was some of the members that were, I would say, adverse to the decision, decided to come to those events anyway. And I think the learning that was able to take place opened the door for more individuals to feel comfortable to walk into the NAACP, knowing that they have that background, but in turn also working with other organizations like One Iowa or LGBT, understanding that inclusivity at the end of the day is what's most important.
Thank you.
Still writing. Okay. Okay. Question number 7. How do you plan to balance the needs and interests of District 4 stakeholders while making decisions that are in the best interest of all students?
Well, this appointment is to District 4. I think first and foremost, I'm beholden and obligated to the members of that community and to the values that they've voted on for the past 18 years with Terry, which I kind of mentioned before. Secondary to that, our entire community is in need, I believe, as a board member, obviously being beholden to the members that would elect for that position is key and crucial, but also understanding that a lot of those issues overlap across districts. They're dealing with some of the similar things that everybody's dealing with across the country, or across the city. Now, are there unique things? I'm sure there are, and through dialogue with those stakeholders, going to those council or neighborhood association meetings, meeting people in public, meeting people at some school events, and understanding what their most concerns are. It'd be my role to be their representative and to make sure that those concerns are being voiced, regardless of whatever the decision is of the board.
Thank you.
How will you ensure transparency and accountability in your role as a school board member?
I've always been an advocate for open communication, right, and dialogue. I think it's key and crucial to ensure that our community trusts the work that we're doing. And I think the opportunity for that is to reach out to the community as much as possible. I know I was excited to see Patrick and Maria on the listening session with the NAACP, but that only happens every 3 years, right? There's more opportunities that we can have to engage with our community, whether it's creating those opportunities at, say, an NAACP meeting or a LULAC meeting where we're coming in or I'm coming in to specifically talk about some of the decisions that have just been made. So to give them an opportunity to address some of their concerns outside of a formal school board meeting, but also an opportunity to educate them on why those decisions were made and what were the decisions that the board made versus the decisions that administration made. And ensuring that that dialogue is two-way, that we're hearing from them as much as they're hearing from us. But I think it's an opportunity for myself to be more proactive in ensuring that I'm meeting with them to encourage to relay what is happening at the board level, what's happening, behind closed doors with individual conversations, what's happening. So yeah, it's just being present. Being present is key. Ensuring that dialogue is two-way street, and doing it as often as possible. And again, informal and in informal ways, but meeting people where they're at. Doesn't all those conversations don't always happen here in the board hall. For whatever reason, folks may not have the opportunity to come every Tuesday night. But there are community groups that are meeting across the week, and we have an opportunity to go out there and continue to advocate for what we're doing here on the board.
Thank you.
Cam, can you provide a time when you challenged the status quo in a previous role? What was the situation? What was your approach? And what was the outcome?
Sure. So I would go back again to my time with the Civil Human Rights Commission. I believe it was the year 2017, March of that year. Des Moines police had over 100 reports of gunshots. And myself and the director of the commission at the time were on a panel, and town hall panel, to discuss this with police officers, church leaders, this, that, and the third. And what occurred at that meeting was nothing. People were upset and they expressed that, but we didn't get to solutions, right? And we didn't get a chance. Those folks, their voices weren't being heard by city council and those that had the true authority to make some of those changes. So what we decided to do was to have a series of community conversations focused on justice. We did 20 different conversations across the city, and we're very intentional in the individuals that we invited to those conversations. We had local elected officials, local staffs, appointed leaders, but also community-based organizational heads, and then other individuals that we deemed that were just active in the community, that were leaders of the community, but didn't necessarily have a title. And all of these conversations were solution-oriented. We started with justice, and we walked through that. And at the end of each conversation, the community came up with different solutions that they had. Altogether, we had 200 different ideations. We then worked with staff to take those 200 different ideations down to policy initiatives, and I believe we got down to about 13. We then re-engaged the community again to ask them to prioritize what their priorities were. We had the assumption that the priorities would be focused on police because that's where the conversation started. But what we identified was that their main issues were, number one, housing. Number two was economic sustainability. And then third was interactions with the police. An initial thought for myself was this is kind of weird because this is not the direction we thought it was going to go. But when I think about safety and justice, I think folks understood the first thing that they need to be safe is a roof over their head. The second thing they need is the income to secure their family. And then they walk outside and are worried about a negative or positive interaction with the police. After we had these interactions, we then took that work to City Council, where they eventually championed this. This is something that I don't believe City Council was working on initially, but we took it upon us as a board to engage the community first and to bring the City Council solutions. To date, as I mentioned, we had 13 policy initiatives. All of those have been acted upon either with direct expressly through the city manager or through legislative changes, ordinance changes. One that we put in place was the Ladder Up program. When we talk about economic sustainability, we created a pilot program where the city granted out dollars to organizations that were focused on upskilling our community. Another issue that was arise was a lot of people felt that we didn't have enough of our police force living in the city. I would also argue that there weren't enough city officials, period, living in the city. So we created a fund to encourage folks to move into the city, where we granted them $15,000 for down payment assistance or rental assistance. Again, encouraging folks to get back into our community. Also helps with our tax base at the end of the day too, right? But in addition to that, language access, we ensured that we opened up some of our city documents to include more broader languages, so folks had access to that without having to go through an interpreter. And then one that we're really proud about, we created an advisory board, a youth advisory board. So similar to another commissioner board, but these are members of our community that are under the age of 24. Again, trying to give voice to the youth, trying to give voice to the people that had no voice. But at the end of the day, we made sure that it was community-centered, community-focused, and solution-oriented.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cam. Final question. What questions do you have?
Awesome. So I got a lot. I don't know where to start.
No, you got a lot of time.
I know we got 40 minutes. Let's have a conversation. The first, I would just appreciate for each of you guys to answer. And I think we've talked about it in our individual conversations, but I would love to hear it again. But just talk to me about your why. I've learned over the course of the past 2 or 3 weeks how difficult your roles are, the time commitment that goes into it, and I'm struck by you guys stepped up and stepped out. And that's important for our community to hear. So I would just love to hear the reason why you did it in the first place, and then why do you continue to do it?
I think a lot of us will say we have kids or had kids in the district, and I think that's your number one reason, as a parent to get involved and volunteer. But for me, I think you'll find literacy is the thing that I really do believe it can be somewhat of a silver bullet, get us started and moving in the right direction quickly. So for me, that's what you'll hear a lot for why I'm here and what I want to accomplish.
Thank you, Patrick.
You were already on, sorry. Oh, I just turned myself off. Yeah.
I think, oh goodness, representation matters. And we have to be intentional about that. I also have children. I have 3, and 2 actually are done, and they all attended or have been part of DMPS. And I think, there's a lot of struggles that our community faces each day. But I think being a representative, knowing who I am, I think of how it is that I made it through school and why. And I keep in my mind the words that my grandmother and my grandfather said to me when I left my village. And they said, you're going to the other side, meaning the other side of the Rio Grande River, to be someone. You're going to have to go to school because you're going to be someone someday. And that's what public education does for our students. I don't think that I would be anywhere if I hadn't had access. And so that's important. And I think our immigrant, refugee communities come with that idea, right? That I want to go because I want my children to be able to accomplish, right, something in school. I want my children to be someone or do something someday. Exactly the words that my grandparents had. And so it's one of the big whys for me.
Grandparents are important, aren't they?
Thanks for asking. It's a great question. It's a great reminder to us to always go back to our why, especially before really hard conversations. I'd probably give 2 answers. My dad was a high school teacher for 33 years. My mom was a school nurse, so I grew up in a family of educators. And my dad's vision and what he always talked to me about education was that it is designed and should be the great equalizer. And it should be that opportunity for everybody to have access to a high quality education. I think if we're all being honest, I'm not sure we're there yet. Yeah. And part of this, and for me, is the fight, because we can't stop fighting for public education. We just can't. If people roll over, they'll just keep taking advantage of it, whether it's through budget cuts or legislation and other pieces. And so for me, it's that fight to have a high-quality public education system where all have access. I think the second thing for me personally is I am about to be an empty nester. I'm so proud of our kids and their accomplishments and what skills they got from public education. But I also know that, what do they say, too much is given, much is expected. And we need leaders in this community to lead on behalf of Des Moines Public Schools. Jackie Easley knows this, but when I came to Iowa, people like Nolden Gentry were on the school board and Jackie Easley, and you had pillars of the community. And I think it is really important that we, at a very high level, keep showing visibly that we need this whole community to get behind Des Moines Public Schools in whatever way we can. And so those are my 2 reasons.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you for the question. Originally, my why was around education. I started my career as an educator, and I worked in a very diverse district in the Chicagoland area, and transitioned here to Des Moines and moved here to Des Moines to work for Des Moines Public Schools, and have always been incredibly passionate about serving those that need a voice and that are not often heard. So when my position was eliminated, I knew that I wanted to continue to serve the students of Des Moines in some way. And I felt that I could be a voice for students that were not heard. So that was my original why, is just really wanting to serve the population of Des Moines Public Schools. Working here was an experience that shaped me, and I was inspired on a daily basis. And I wanted to be a part of what Des Moines Public Schools was doing on behalf of children. And so it was really tough to walk away and not be a part of that anymore. So that's when I decided to run for the school board. And now the more I look at the data and the more that we look at the systems that we have in place, it is crucial, like Jackie said, to have people that are willing to challenge that status quo, ask the really tough questions, be respectful, learn as much as we can, understand the data, like you said, be solutions focused with all of that, and continue to champion our students and what they're capable of and the scholars that they are.
Thank you. Thank you, Cam.
So like you, Cam, I mean, I'm like a fourth generation Des Moines Public Schools grad, right? I mean, I was the fourth generation to graduate from Lincoln, actually, in my family. So Des Moines Public Schools is, I mean, you know, we grew up in Des Moines Public Schools, right? You have a pride in Des Moines Public Schools against the suburbs, against the private schools. It's just kind of who your identity is. And I think my why, although my children, yes, are in Des Moines Public Schools now, my real why is just trying to protect that legacy. And I think that is so much of just who I am and who I want my children to be. I want them to have the same just pride in our city and our pride in going to our city's public schools, not a suburb public schools, but a pride here. And I want our district to be a place that attracts everyone from the suburbs and private schools to come here, right? Like I just think we have so much potential. We have so many amazing things. It's just like wanting to be a part of packaging it all together. And so I think that drives me, that sort of competitive, I'm highly competitive, my competitive nature, and enthusiasm. And it's hard.
Yeah.
It's a really hard because there are so many headwinds and it's just a lot. But you know, just wanting people at the table and staying motivated by everyone at the table, believing in that too, and continuing to push.
Yeah.
So it's a privilege to be here and be a part of it.
Yeah, it makes me think, Jenna, when I graduated, you know, we were still, Iowa was #1 in education. I feel like Des Moines Public Schools is a destination district. And I had a lot of tough conversations with my daughter's mom about where we're going to send her to school. She went out. You know, she's a suburban school person herself. And I want to get Des Moines back to being that destination district where folks want to send their kids here.
I hear you.
Thank you.
All right. So my why. Disclaimer, guys. No, my why's changed a little bit, but my original why, my district suffered a lot 2 years ago, exactly 2 years ago.
Yeah.
East High shooting. I do not want that to happen to anybody else. As a parent, as a student, that was really hard. Then going from the accident of my daughter, honestly, we need change, not only just from the school, but from the city.
Yeah.
Just that hardship, we see it every day. So safety was my number one priority, why I decided to run for school board. And then just trickle down to what you guys all said about, we have a diverse culture of Des Moines Public Schools, and we need to embrace it. There's a lot of things going on here. Generations. I am also generations and generations of Des Moines Public Schools. 3 kids graduated from Des Moines Public Schools, and it's just the community, and we need to bring it back. And we have a lot of opportunities, a lot of good things going on here that we need to tap into. So my why has changed throughout the last couple months, and just fighting, advocating for our students.
Sure, thank you. You mentioned, we have work to do as a school board, but also the city has work to do. I think, Jack, we talked about this a couple months ago, about that collaboration between city council and school board, city staff and DMPS staff. What has there been, do you guys see a pathway to create that dialogue, or has there been steps already taken in that direction?
Yeah, I definitely think transitions in leadership are always great, right? Because it allows the opportunity for new mayor, new superintendent, new council members, new board members to talk. I don't think we've figured out how to harness our power together. I think that there's definitely an interest on behalf of our City of Des Moines taxpayers to identify efficiencies and capital assets and things like that. I think, to me, where the really exciting opportunity is potentially either around pre-K, because our city has already shown an interest in wanting to work with us to add preschool classrooms, and in literacy. I mean, if you think about it, the city has libraries and librarians. We don't have librarians, and we have a literacy goal, right? And so I think it's going to take hard work, and that's not easy. It's not going to happen overnight, which is really hard for people like me who are really impatient. But I do think, the conditions are ripe. It's now just a matter of figuring out how to operationalize on some of these really interesting ideas.
Awesome, thank you.
But I'd love to hear from other people too.
Honestly, Linda and I, we get along great. We have plans to kind of just meet up with, people in the community and chat with them at neighborhood meetings and stuff, and, have coffee and with teachers or, the community school coordinators, see what they need throughout the summer, things like that. So, I mean, it's just a conversation.
Yeah, the dialogue, awesome.
Yeah.
Connie is a previous school board member, and she's served on the school board certainly in a different time than where we're at right now, but she recognizes the importance of that collaboration, and I think is driven to make that happen. And so I think we're in the early stages of making that happen, but there's a definite desire on both sides to make that happen.
I think it'll be critical over the next few months as we transition city managers as well. I think that's going to be a really important decision, but I sense the appetite. I think everybody senses the appetite for collaboration. I guess the only other thought I would have is that I read a great book one time about the companies that have really thrived in the digital age have been the ones that have figured out connections with products and services and how they serve people's lives, and really honed in on connecting more than one thing together. And I think, to Jackie's point, when we can figure out how to connect what we do really well with what other agencies do really well, we will be a lot more efficient and effective for the people that we serve all around.
Yes to everything.
Yes, everything, awesome. My next question would be, so in what ways does the board collaborate with local organizations, businesses, and community leaders to leverage resources and support for district initiatives? And how can an incoming board member contribute to strengthening those partnerships?
You want to talk about the listening sessions, or you can say what you want?
Yeah, you mentioned it in one of your answers. We have engaged in community listening sessions just recently. It is something that we as a board are committed to doing more on a cadence that is more than that every 3 years. I think that we spent so much time talking about what does it look like and how to do it perfect. And we now know as a board that we just want to make it happen. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but we will get better. And as long as we're focused on continuous improvement, we will be out there engaging with the community, listening, being empathetic listeners, and grounding our decision-making in what it is that our community vision and values are. The other piece of that, I think, really speaks to our community partners. And this is an area that I think is definitely an opportunity for for improvement. And the board has had focus on that and given Dr. Roberts kind of the charge to really be creative with what those community partners look like, particularly with reimagining education. It is the superintendent's role, but we are holding him accountable because we know that we're not going to be able to do it all on our own. We have to leverage the resources and expertise in our community.
And that's what I heard out of your question, and I think the hiring of the chief of staff, head of philanthropy position speaks to the appetite on this board for partnerships that not only provide support, but provide resources for the district where we are having trouble getting resources from where they should be coming from.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
You know, one thing I'll add is ideally, when we went into the listening session, both for the superintendent and then for the goals conversation, there would have been a stronger existing infrastructure that, you know, through the amazing network of staff, of BFLs, of success caseworkers, of community school coordinators, that we could have better harnessed that. I think that is a place that is just so ripe with growth, because ideally that infrastructure shouldn't just be one-off. It should be a more consistent engagement with the community, and that's not just the board's responsibility, right? But I do think it's a great way for us to try and make pathways for teachers, right? So teachers are really trying to figure out, how on earth can I get in front of students and their parents in different ways? Well, that's to me, that's the beauty of how do we harness the full network of connections we have in some organized way. And there's no doubt that that is a big point of pride and importance for Dr. Roberts, which I think we also highly value in his acknowledging how important community engagement is.
Thank you.
You know,
Yeah.
I will go. I think that, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Okay, stop it, Maria.
You're on right now.
Can you hear me now?
You just need to be more patient. There is no, now you turned it off, friend.
Okay, there you go.
There we go.
We can hear you.
I think
Oh, sorry, what'd you say?
I think there's a disconnect. I think there's a disconnect, you know, historically, and to me, it's so fundamental to acknowledge families. And there's been a disconnect between families and schools. And I think that we have to be able to go back to those fundamentals, right? And to utilize the resources that you have access to. We talk a lot about the things that we don't have and don't acknowledge the things that we have that probably are the richest things and resources, which is our families, our parents. And I think to, you know, the point that some of the colleagues have made, we don't know how to collaborate. And then obviously that expands into, we don't use the resources that we have in the community to meet the needs that we have in the district. And so I think that we're doing a better job. I think that we're working harder at seeing what we have, acknowledging what we have, and how best we can take advantage of that for the outcomes that we want to see in our students, from our students.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think, some folks might see it as a challenge, but I really think the board, what I'm hearing, is sees it as an opportunity. And when I hear partnership, excuse me, especially from the philanthropic side of things, excuse me, think about investment, right? How do we invest in our students, right? Whether it's the big box retailers or people that have, right? Where are they at in this process? And I think that's an opportunity to continue to engage, especially with the barriers that we have coming from our state legislature. So, next question: how does the board support professional development opportunities for educators and staff to enhance their cultural competency and meet the diverse needs of our students?
Oh, no. You're off. You're off.
There's a disconnect.
I would, the way I hear your question, I would see that as sort of a Dr. Roberts, and he talks a lot about it, but I think this is one of those functions of we can push or nudge slightly if we feel like the professional development isn't going or producing the results that we're all after. But I feel like there's quite a bit of professional development built into our calendar for sure. And that it is, the way Dr. Roberts talks about it is culturally responsive. Those words come up all the time. So I feel like that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I think this is a good example with goals and guardrails. One of the guardrails is this in particular. It's less focused on professional development. It's more focused on hiring, but it is acknowledging that we have to continue to make strides in the diversity of our staff, kind of by all means possible. So whether that's pathways to education or policy around hiring, policy around background checks, things like that. I mean, that you have to keep driving around that because that also sets the tone for the district. That's not necessarily professional development, but it's modeling. I will say there's been a lot of investment starting last year in the GLEAM framework. If you've heard that at all, what is it? Grade level affirming, E and meaningful. Engaging. But it is, and I happened to yesterday go on a walkthrough to watch it, and it was pretty powerful. I mean, the attempt is to go in that room and look and see how every student is being engaged, recognizing that they're all different, and yet each of them has power, right? Because even though each of them is different, and so looking at the materials that they're accessing, looking at the messages that are on the wall, looking at scaffolding that is, maybe you've got some lower level learners and some higher level learners, but does everybody have access to learning? And so, I mean, that's just one example where I think there's a pretty significant investment being made in GLEAM, which is again, I'm going to call it a learning framework, in addition to the way I understand the curriculum. And again, Patrick's right, this is Dr. Roberts and the staff's decision. EL and ML are very focused on a culturally relevant set of materials, set of interactions. And so it feels like we've got the right materials in terms of curriculum and framework, but now it's the professional development to keep it going. And I think a big concern is people leave. There's so much transition in Des Moines Public Schools. So just when you feel like it's working, then people transition out. And so you can't ever let your foot off the gas because otherwise initiatives can die that way.
Sure.
One of the beautiful things about our EL and IM curriculum is that it gives the opportunity. Of course, there's content, and the content is delivered in a way that, or it's intended to see every student in the classroom. And it gives the teachers an opportunity, regardless of what topic is being discussed, to have a conversation with the students in that classroom and say, what does this look like for you? What does this look like in your real life? And it's those conversations that are happening alongside of the literacy and the math work that are building these connections with fellow student colleagues. And again, students sharing those stories, they're feeling seen, they're feeling heard. Other students have the opportunity to learn about their fellow colleagues. It's really beautiful to see it in action. And so this board is absolutely committed to cultural competence. Thank you. There's a disconnect. And so, yeah, it's definitely something that we invest in and stand behind 100%.
Awesome. And then the final question, again, I guess this kind of gets to the guardrail, so maybe I should frame it more of how is this being monitored? But, how is the board addressing or monitoring the rising needs around mental health and wellness? Not only our students, but also our educators as well.
This is a hard one.
Just personally for me, I think this is one of those areas that we just talked about where there are experts in this in the community that do this full time. And this is one area where school was not originally built to be a place to heal kids mentally and to have that expertise. And so to the extent that we can, bringing in our partners in the community that do this for a living and focus on nothing else but, I would be leaning toward trying to find those opportunities so that we could, but it is a reality in our buildings, and when you get everyone together in the same place, it is holding some students back, not giving them the opportunities that they need, and so obviously it's a huge need. It is where we find the resources, and what are we asking people who wanted to be teachers growing up to also be mental health professionals? That's a very difficult thing to do. So that's just my perspective.
I think too, just on that topic, because I think we're settling on a guardrail around that in terms of health of both students and staff. I do think, and I have artifacts that I can show you. Part of this is regularly pushing the superintendent to say, have you heard about this? Hey, have you heard about this? Like, this is University of Iowa, this is telehealth. Like, just bringing ideas forward. I think sometimes you can get in a resource-constrained mindset, and you can't even see what the forest through the trees, or I always get it wrong. But, and so just continuing to push to think about, something in the community, other ways of delivering services. It may not be perfect, but it's better than nothing. So I think that's a role that I love. Some people think it's like, kind of, I don't want to say meddling, but just like let the superintendent do his job. Yeah, I'll let him do his job, but I just want to make sure, have you heard about this? Are you, thinking about things like that? And I do think when it's done right, it's in the spirit of partnership and growth.
The goals and guardrails represent our community's vision and values, as you heard in your workshop. We, as the board, are holding our superintendent accountable to meeting those goals while honoring those guardrails. So we have built Dr. Roberts' evaluation, and the foundation is those goals and guardrails. So the social and emotional well-being of our students is one of those guardrails that gets monitored minimum. We have 3 interim guardrails that we monitor, all 3 of those guardrails, or interim guardrails rather, minimum of annually. If we are off track, we request off-track monitoring, and it wasn't too long ago that we just had an off-track monitoring of the social and emotional well-being of our students. The community has spoken. They still want us to focus on social and emotional learning for not only our students but our staff. So we are building that into the new version of the guardrails as well. Now, you asked about mental health, and so I just want to be cognizant of that we're not mixing those two either. They are different. Our focus, based on what we heard from the community, has been the social and emotional well-being of individuals in our system, and mental health is a part of that. But
yeah, but they're, like as Patrick said, partnership, right, and opportunities. So, thank you. Well, those are my questions. I think we almost got the time. I just want to appreciate you guys for, advancing me through this process, giving me space to advocate for myself right now. And I hope that we continue to make this hard on you. This is an important decision. I don't think anybody is attempting to fill the shoes of Terry Caldwell Johnson, but we are trying to represent for her values and her vision. So again, thank you for your opportunity.
Thanks, Cam.
Thanks, Cam.
Thank you, Cam. We have one additional interview after this. That will be the last interview of the process. We will then begin calibration and deliberation, and make a decision. The candidate who rises to the top will be sworn in at our regular business meeting on April 16th.
16th, awesome.
And I may have misspoke. I don't think we start that until 8 o'clock, because that's what it's posted as. Is that correct?
So our last interview begins at 7, goes until 8, and so deliberations begin at the conclusion of, yes.
I think
at
it
8
has to
p.m.
be
That
canceled.
will
Yes.
be live streamed, right? Or
Yeah.
not?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Cam.
Cam.
We are ready to begin our 6th and final interview of the process to fill our District 4 vacancy. So welcome, Skylar. We have 10 questions for you this evening, which we will kind of do round robin style. I will be timekeeper and raise my hand at 5 minutes. I will not stop you, but if you see me raising my hand, that's just an indication of you're at 5 minutes for that particular question. I think that's it. If you,
Most candidates have been moving pretty quickly through the questions, so.
so don't feel pressured by time, yeah. So if you'll just state your name before we get started, and then we'll dive right into the questions.
Yes, thank you. My name is Skylar Mayberry Mays.
Hold on just a second, Skylar. There we go. Say that again for me.
Skylar Mayberry Mays.
Thank you.
All right, Skylar, thanks for joining us today in this nice, beautiful day. What motivated you to apply for the school board position?
Yeah, thank you, Anna, for the question. When I think about what motivated me to apply for the school board, there are actually a lot of reasons why I sit here before you today that have expressed my interest. But particularly this evening, I really want to focus on 2 specific reasons, and that translates to 2 specific names of people who have made a significant, lasting impact in my life, although they're no longer here on this earth. One of them is, this is a delicate dance in a very delicate time. And over the years, I have had the fortune to be mentored and to have role models in this community, one of them being Terry Caldwell Johnson. For several years, Terry has mentored me, Terry has helped me, I have learned from her, and Terry encouraged me to consider this journey. So that's one of the reasons. The second reason happened 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was partnered and matched through the Big Brothers Big Sisters program with a young man by the name of Montrell. When I met Montrell in 5th grade at King Elementary School, he shared a few things with me. But one thing that I observed was that Montrell was vocal, he was charismatic, and he was intentional. But unfortunately, community labeled him as disruptive, challenging, and problematic. So the 2 reasons I'm here today, to stand on the shoulders of Terry Caldwell Johnson and continue her legacy. And number 2, to ensure that no one in this school district ever has the experience that Montrell had again, because he deserved to have his potential defended, and I, as well as this district, let that slip out of our hands.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've been having technology problems
Sorry.
all night.
Thank
so we're getting a little
you.
feisty.
Everybody's
with
hot
this.
right now. Everybody's hot.
Okay. Skylar, what do you feel are the largest challenges facing our school district, and how would your appointment to the school board help the board in addressing these challenges?
Yes, thank you, Jenna, for the question. So I've identified what I think are 3 of the largest challenges facing the school district right now, while there are many others, but also to recognize that these challenges are not unique just to Des Moines Public Schools, but we're truly experiencing some challenges globally and throughout our nation. The first one is addressing the achievement gaps. It is no secret that there are certainly marginalized populations within this school district, And I'm specifically referring to our ELL students and our Black males who are not achieving at the levels that they deserve to be achieving at. We have to put intentional efforts behind them, intentional resources and intentional support to ensure that we're closing the achievement gap so that they're accomplishing the same levels of things that those around them are. The second challenge would be ensuring equitable access to resources. DMPS is really fortunate that there are so many resources available to our students. However, we also recognize that not all of these students know that all of these resources exist. And it's not just the students, but making sure that the parents also know that these resources exist, because the parents ultimately are the ones making the decisions, but sometimes they're being informed by the students. And the third biggest challenge I see in this district is navigating the complexities of a diverse student population. Our student body is changing daily. Our student body looks at the dais, they look at these chairs, and they want representation as well. They want someone sitting at the seat that also has the lived experiences that they've had. They deserve to have Black male representation that's not just the superintendent. They deserve to have representation. They deserve it, they've earned it, and they need it. And until we as a district and we as a board are ready to challenge ourselves and do that and face this status quo, they're going to continuously be underwhelmed, underserved, and under-resourced.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna.
Skylar, how do you plan to collaborate with other board members and the community members to make informed decisions as a board member?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. So there are a few ways that in which I plan to collaborate. And I would say the first step in that has been what I've taken over the past several weeks, and that's getting to know most of you. I think it's critical that in order to collaborate, you have to understand why someone sits in the space that they sit in. So as I sat with many of you and was able to have conversations about why you're on the school board, what drove your passion, what drove your interests, it helped me to understand that collaboration is possible because you have the same reasons for sitting there as I do. In addition to that, I think we have to make sure we have open communication channels. The communication channels can't simply be public forums and newspapers. Those times are outdated. We have to meet them where they are, and that may be things like social media. It may be things like articles and newspapers in different languages, but we have to meet our population of our students where they are in order to truly collaborate and bring them to the table. And lastly, it's making myself accessible and available. That means sitting outside of just these four walls. Now, while I recognize the importance of serving and sitting in this seat, I also recognize the importance of being engaged authentically and genuinely within this community. I've been very fortunate to work in community relations professionally, and I've learned many design tricks and expertise tricks about how do you convene and bring together populations that are oftentimes marginalized and overlooked. So when I think about collaboration, it's doing just that, meeting them where they are and convening populations that historically have not been invited to the table.
Thanks, Skylar. The next question is about the superintendent. What do you see as the role of a school board member in holding the superintendent accountable for achieving the goals while honoring the guardrails?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. So as it relates to the responsibilities of accountability of the superintendent, I've had some time to familiarize myself with the student outcomes-focused governance framework. And I recognize within that framework that the role of the school board member is simply to elevate the voice, the vision, and the values of the community and provide them as goals and guardrails, but truly allowing the superintendent to drive the vehicle to our destination. So when I think about accountability, there are a few areas that I'd like to focus on. One, as a school board, you must set clear expectations. It can't just be written down and it can't just be verbal, but it has to be a conversation that's robust and immersive. Second would be monitoring progress. I know that the school board currently monitors progress on an interim basis, but it's more than just looking at the numbers and saying, wow, we've dropped, or wow, we've increased. It's asking the thoughtful questions, the questions that advance the conversation and move it forward to find and identify innovative solutions for the metrics that aren't being met. And lastly, it's continuous improvement, and it's challenging that status quo. We as a district and as a school board have to challenge the status quo, and we have to ask those thoughtful questions that make us think, what would the students say if they were sitting on this chair? What would the parents say if they were sitting in the audience? How do we hold a superintendent accountable by fostering a culture of continuous improvement and collaboration?
There is a disconnect? No, there is no
you're
disconnect
good.
anymore. This is great. We were having challenges with our mic.
I think
Muchas gracias. Mande?
Were, for the record. I think you were.
I was having challenges. There is a disconnect within myself. How do you envision engaging with parents, students, and community stakeholders to ensure their voices are heard in the decision-making process?
Yes, thank you, Maria. When I think about being engaged with those populations, I go back to a comment I made earlier. It's about meeting them where they are. We have to actually meet these populations where they are. We can't afford and we can't rely on having a public forum in the evenings at 6:30 and expecting our everyday families to be able to show up and speak. It doesn't work for everyone. Meeting them, leveraging the expertise, the resources, and the broad networks of our community partners, whether those are nonprofits, businesses, educational institutions, or religious-based organizations, we have to show up in places that they are, and that's how we engage. We've tried for too long to invite them to the space. We've now got to get innovative in meeting them where they're at.
Thanks, Skylar. Question 6 is, can you provide an example of a difficult decision you've had to make in a leadership role and how you approached that decision?
Thank you, Patrick. The example that I'll offer is fairly recent. I have the pleasure of serving as the executive director of the Jacobson Institute at Grandview University. And while our scope is innovation and education, our mission has changed over the years. So our current mission is preparing, producing, and pivoting a future-ready workforce. And we're doing this intentionally. When I joined into this role, there was a focus on global fluency and global populations. My approach to changing this was to go into the role and for the first 30 days to 60 days, simply to listen and to learn and to understand what the needs were and if the needs aligned with the mission and the focus of our institute. Well, I found out very quickly that the mission of our institute was probably more aligned with our local population. So the difficult decision was, while there were resources allocated to a global population and organizations to support that, our focus really needed to be more narrowly scoped here locally. I understand it may have frustrated certain parties, it may have caused some discourse and some tension, but at the end of the day, it helped a population and it aligned with the sentiment of those, our stakeholders. The way in which I approached this was having that conversation after listening and learning, but also finding ways to educate and to get buy-in from those populations and show them that they too could help be advocates and sponsors of that work.
Thank you.
Okay, question number 7. How do you plan to balance the needs and interests of District 4 stakeholders while making decisions that are in the best interest of all students?
Yes, great question, Anna. When I think about balancing the needs of District 4 with the broader DMPS district, one thing comes to mind, and that's student-centered. We have to be student-centered, and sometimes that means that the priorities of your district may not be those most in need. We have to actually be student outcome focused. The beauty in all of this is that we continuously reevaluate what needs are needing to be met, what gaps are currently existing. So I may know that sometimes District 4's needs are not those that are being written down as the goals, but that we'll continuously evaluate those and that the needs of District 4 will eventually be met or will be met because of that process. The other thing I would offer is I recognize that there's a significant amount of diversity within these districts, particularly District 4. Beyond just the ethnic diversity, there's also the socioeconomic diversity that exists. And sometimes those can be competing priorities. But I'd be remiss to say that just because an issue exists within one district doesn't mean that it's not an issue for the entire population. So I'll finish this thought by saying I think both can exist. There can be needs of District 4 and needs of the district that coexist at the same time, and there's opportunities to create synergy and collaboration in advancing all of them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so how will you ensure transparency and accountability in your role as a school board member?
Thank you, Jenna. Well, I would first, by defining transparency, I don't believe you can have transparency without having everyone's voice represented at the table. So for me, that is the key, is that we have all voices at the table. And the voices that cannot make it to the table, representation needs to be there, and be willing to fight for those voices who are not at that table. But in order to invite them to the table, we have to be flexible and we have to be welcoming and foster that culture so that they feel comfortable enough being there. The other thing that I'll plan to do as far as accountability, which I've already done, is making sure that I'm present at all meetings. I've cleared my calendar for every school board meeting for the rest of this year. Not just showing up in person, but being present, doing my due diligence, being prepared to have engaging and thoughtful conversations as we sit around this table.
Just block every Tuesday.
Sorry.
They just keep adding on to just every Tuesday.
Through midnight.
Till at least 10
no
o'clock.
food or water.
No food.
Crackers only.
Not true, Skylar. Sorry. I'm sorry.
No es cierto.
Keeping it real.
We're
I've seen a few of you eating snacks at the meetings.
Skylar, can you share a time when you have challenged status quo? In your previous role, your current role, what was the situation? How did you approach it, and what was the outcome?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. So I'll lean on an experience as a volunteer in this community for this question. And when I arrived to Des Moines, there was a program that I was involved with where volunteer members were doing volunteer service to prepare students to go to high school and then to go to college. And within this program, it wasn't new, but I was new to it. The program had been around since 1922, but I had just joined and started getting familiar. Here locally, when it was being implemented, the program took place at a high school, and I understood that based off of the research and based off of many of the conversations, that in order to prepare students for secondary education, you can't just start at the high school. So when I became the director of educational activities for this program, I was intentional about changing some of our focus. I moved that program solely from a high school, and it already had good outcomes, but I moved it to a local middle school so that we could start sooner. I realized that program was specifically focused on preparing students for college readiness, but I changed the pivot to career readiness. It was more than just going to college, and it was more than just being prepared in high school. I really wanted to align my vision with the data that supported it, starting earlier and realizing that not everyone has an interest or a desire to go to college. To answer your question about the outcome can be viewed in this community. The outcome is business professionals, HVAC technicians, college graduates, and loving parents.
That was so nice.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Can I ask a follow-up question?
Can you ask a follow-up question? I
Can
think
I?
you can. Yes, I think.
What is your thought about goal 3? Our goal 3.
Why don't you tell him?
Give
which
him
one it is?
a
Career
little
readiness.
context.
I
'Cause
wouldn't know it by
yeah.
the numbers.
Career readiness.
Career readiness. Well, I think you appreciate the layup. So, I have a lot of thoughts around career readiness. As several of you are probably familiar just from maybe my resume or maybe in conversation, I decided to make a difficult decision 3 months ago. After spending over a decade in corporate America, doing really well at it and actually enjoying it, I decided to align my career with my heart and with my passion. and I made the pivot and moved into higher education. But I'm not in the traditional sense of higher education that most think. While I am an administrator at a university, my focus is specifically on a future-ready workforce. Although I am the beneficiary of going to college, I have family members, I have friends, and I have mentees that have also benefited from solid career choices. So my thoughts around goal number 3, I think it's brilliant that we're focused on more than just going to college, because all students don't have an interest in that, and all students deserve access to resources to prepare them for life after high school.
Gracias. Brillante. Brilliant.
De nada.
Skylar. So Skylar, you were so good with your time. It's 7:20. And so this is your time to ask us questions. We've got about probably 30 minutes, a little bit less than that for questions.
Thank you so much. First, I'll yield to see if there are any additional follow-up questions, and then I will have some as well.
So I think we're trying to refrain from asking questions of the candidates, so we stay on script.
Perfect. It's good to have framework.
Thank you.
All right. So what I will share, I have, as mentioned, I've done my due diligence over the past several weeks to understand why all of you are sitting in these seats, but also understand what motivates you about school board, what motivates you about our community. So although I don't have any final questions, I do have a final why that I'd be willing and interested in sharing. And this final why dates back 17 years ago. As a high school senior in a public school system, 3 weeks before graduating high school, all throughout high school, I'd worked at a local grocery store, and my vision of success was to continue working at that grocery store and one day become the assistant manager. It was programs in our communities like IJAG and Avenue Scholars and Alpha Phi Alpha and investing in my future, big brothers, big sisters, that defended my potential. I had a specialist in my class by the name of Miss Bragg. And what Miss Bragg said to me 3 weeks before graduating high school was, "What are your plans after high school?" I said, "Miss Bragg, I'm gonna go be the assistant manager at the local Hy-Vee." She never talked negatively upon that. But what she did was provided resources and alternatives. Ms. Bragg encouraged me to take the ASVAB and the ACT, but she took it a step further. She found a way to have it paid for so that I could take it. I took the ACT and the ASVAB not because I wanted to, but because Ms. Bragg looked like me and she had me in her best interests. I took the ACT and I scored a 16. At that time, that was foreign to me. I had no idea what a 16 meant in the grand scheme of things. But I called Ms. Bragg immediately and I shared, I took the ACT and I scored a 16. Her response was quick. "Are you okay with me sharing this with the class?" The very next day I got to my high school classroom, there were balloons, there were streamers, and there was a cake that said, "Congratulations." Ms. Bragg celebrated the fact that I did something that was different. Ms. Bragg then started thinking quickly. She said, "We've got to get you moving. Do you have an interest in college?" A very foreign concept at the time as a first-generation college student and graduate. It wasn't something I had considered. Ms. Bragg set me up with an internship program for 1 week with her State Farm agent. Ms. Bragg helped me identify a major of finance and real estate because she observed my passion in the game Monopoly. 5 years later, sight unseen, I walked across the stage at the University of Northern Iowa with dual degrees in finance and real estate. So my why is simple. The Terry Caldwell Johnsons, the Montrells, and the Miss Braggs. All students in Des Moines Public Schools deserve to have a Miss Bragg in their life. And I'm grateful that I had her, and I will continue to fight until hell freezes over, and then I will fight on the ice. Thank you.
Thank you, Skylar.
Thanks, Skylar.
Thank you, Skylar.
Gracias.
So, that was wonderful. Do you have any other questions you want to ask us?
I do not.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks to the fan club. There will be pretzels back here if anybody would like some.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Skylar.
Do you want to say what's next?
All right, that concludes our sixth and final interview of candidates to fill the District 4 vacancy. Board members, please take time to compile your scale scores and enter them into the document that I sent to each of you. And we will begin our next session promptly at 8 p.m., our next special meeting, promptly at 8 p.m. to discuss the results of the interviews and decide which applicant and will be our District 4 board member.
Thank you.
Questions? No, it's not. If you'd like to.
Go get your popcorn, Jackie.
Yep.
Come on.
We'll be here. It'll be streamed too, so we'll be here and it will be streamed.
Yeah. 8
o'clock.
p.m.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone for being here.
Thank you for
I am
coming.
very grateful to see all of your beautiful faces here. Thank you.